You are listening to the Billy Dees podcast.
We are waiting just a minute for everyone to engage the live stream. Remember, you can find the Billy Dees podcast on your favorite platform.
All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the live stream. We wait just a moment for everyone to kind of refresh their browser, refresh their app, whatever it is they need to do. And then we go on to actually produce the podcast that you hear on all the major podcast platforms in the background. So I'll wait just a moment and we'll get it started. Thank you. All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the program. If you are new here, first of all, welcome. We are primarily an interview and a commentary-based podcast. On Friday nights, we go live, and that's pretty much all commentary. Sometimes we cover one topic, and sometimes we cover a bunch. That's kind of what we're going to do today. With me is Cynthia Elliott. Cynthia, welcome. So glad you are here.
Billy, thank you so much for having me. I always enjoy coming on the show.
Awesome. Well, it's great to have you. A number of things going on in the news. What I want to kind of start with, because I don't know what it is. People get obsessed with these stories, and the conspiracy theories just get out of control. And one of the ones that's really been circulating for a long time now, I believe Epstein's been gone for 5 or 6 years. And, of course, he died in jail. And there's that. There's the Diddy thing that's been going on. And all these people get all these ideas about all these celebrities that are supposedly involved, and all of them that are going to crash when these Epstein files get released. I kind of suspected from the beginning that this was going to be kind of a dud. And I'm going to say the same thing about the Diddy files. It's too early to tell. Obviously, that case is ongoing. And by the way, it's been getting a lot of coverage on the major news. I mean, it's like, World War III just started, but first, emotional testimony today in the Diddy trial. So I think what happens a lot of times is these conspiracy stories raise the expectations. And people have such a hatred of celebrity culture now. They have such a hatred of celebrities in general that they get on this kick that the people that they hate are going to get taken down. And they pick up on all these stories on the internet, and most of which have credibility issues. So I got to say, too, you don't know what happens behind the scenes at some of these trials. And when some of these people have been indicted, they turn state's evidence. They do a lot of other things. And a lot of the stuff just can't come out once all that starts happening. So what is your take on this?
Well, honestly, when there's a long period of time between the rumors and the actually getting arrested and all of that, I always assume that a lot of things were destroyed, gotten rid of.
Yeah.
I find it very hard to believe Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, I like Kash Patel, and I saw the clip of him. I forget what show he was on.
Yeah, we're going to play it. Mm-hmm.
I find it very hard to believe that he would take himself out. He was a narcissist of the worst kind. And this is me diagnosing him just based on his consistent behavior. And it is really unusual for when they get a chance to get in the spotlight, even if the spotlight is horrible, for them to give up the chance to defend themselves. And then the statistical odds of all those cameras not working, and then he just so happens to choose that moment to take himself out. Like, the whole thing just stinks to high heaven. But
yeah,
I'm not surprised that he did leave the planet, if you will. But I do believe that Sean Puffy Combs is he accumulated too much evidence that he kept.
Yeah, he's got receipts, right?
Yeah, and he got caught on camera. Like, there's a lot there, and but he was also well known for. I mean, I knew in the early 2000s that he was somebody whose parties you did not go to and accept any kind of drinks.
Yeah.
So, that this we see this throughout history. Like JFK is another good example of RFK. It's like there's the incident and then these delays and then we're looking at, and it just takes years and years and years. And by the time the evidence gets released, there's not really any big reveals.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and play a clip, and then I'll give you a little maybe instance. It's all conjecture, in terms of what I kind of feel may happen. But this is Kash Patel and Dan Bonjingo. I believe that's how you say his name. He had a podcast. I sample a lot of the podcasts being in the business that I'm in. I haven't watched his too much, but he gave that up to work in the Trump administration. Here's these two guys talking. And then on the other side of this clip, I have another clip. I have two clips together. I have what they told the news. And then I have a clip of Senator Kennedy, and I put that all together. And I changed this a little different, just so you know, Cynthia. We can watch the video together with the audience and listen to it. So here we go.
Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide. People don't believe it.
Well, I mean, listen, they have a right to their opinion, but as someone who has worked as a public defender, as a prosecutor, who's been in that prison system, who's been in the Metropolitan Detention Center, who's been in segregated housing, you know a suicide when you see one, and that's what that was.
He killed himself. You want me to? I've seen the whole file.
Christmas ornaments, drywall, and Jerry Epstein. Name three things that don't hang themselves. That's what the American people think. That's what the American people think. And they deserve some answers.
He is right about that. That is what the people think. And I got to say, there's a lot of ways this could happen. Did somebody go in there with a twist wire and strangle him? Probably not. However, when you get somebody isolated like that, you can start playing psychological games with them, saying, you're better off, leaving on your own, like the Nazis did with when they found a spy. You have your option of taking the cyanide pill and not putting your family through watching you get executed. And you put those kind of notions into people's heads, and then you give them an opportunity. You turn your back, let them do it. And that's the thing. I don't know if somebody killed him or not, but whether somebody put him up to it is another thing entirely. I can't believe that this wasn't tampered with, considering, like you said, the strange coincidences that, this didn't work. This guy, went to look out the window and this other guy did that. It's just ridiculous. Do you want to add any more to that? But that's kind of my feeling. I kind of feel somebody might have put him up to it.
Yeah, I pushed him. I think so. If he did in fact use his own hand, he was somehow manipulated or pushed to it. People have been, I mean, if you go back in the history of Jeffrey Epstein and all of the trouble that was gone to keep him out of jail and to excuse his behavior and to make it easy for him to keep doing what he was doing. And that went on for years. And then he does finally get arrested, which involves the names of a lot of powerful and rich people. And then he just so happens to die in prison while all the cameras are not working and nobody's around. I mean, come on. And he was a high candidate for something like that to happen to him or for him to do it himself. The fact that all those people abandoned that situation, the whole thing stinks to high heaven. I mean, Kash could be right. He may have done it himself, but I do believe he was probably pushed to.
Yeah, that's probably my feeling. I can tell you, too, that a lot of what happens online is people, if you don't like Trump, you're going to find a picture of him and Epstein. If you don't like Clinton, you're going to find a picture of him and Clinton, and on down the line. Okay. And the fact of the matter is somebody with this amount of money can buy themselves access to just about anybody. And a lot of times it's very legit. I've had a lot of people, in the business world who were pretty well-to-do, and most of them were Republicans, and they had pictures on their desk of themselves and Reagan, of themselves and Bush, and basically they went to these high stakes dinners, where the plate. The food is $25,000 a plate. Of course, it's not for the food; it's to raise money for the Republicans or whatever. And part of the bonus of that is getting your picture taken with the candidate. So, and that's just an example. There's a lot of these things where you can buy your way, and to get into those kind of parties for somebody like him was pocket change. It wasn't even pocket change.
Yeah, I have to say that not only I went to the mayor's house and whatever you call it, mansion in New York City for some event, and there's literally a line of of all the VIP guests, and they literally just stood and waited for their turn to take that impromptu photo. I've also been did events at in New York City in the early 2000s that Jeffrey Epstein was at. And that is the scenario. Those people are not getting together. I did events with BlackRock and some of the other biggies of the time, and Jeffrey Epstein was at all the major events. And it was very common for the photographers to keep setting up the photos because people wanted to be in photos together. So I don't think give much credence to anybody having a photo with somebody who was infamous.
No, yeah, and there's a good chance that a lot of these people don't even remember being with that person because they're with thousands of them throughout the course of the years.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, we'll move on here. I'm going to play this other clip. You and I played this clip. I actually played it last week. But you and I played this clip a lot, and I'll do it for old time's sake, but I'm going to lead into the Jake Tapper book because I spoke about that last week too. I don't want to go through it all again, but I want to get your reaction on it. This is our good friend, Joe Biden. And here
Folks,
again, for old time's sake.
Imagine what we can do next. 4 more years. Pause. 4 more years. 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 Are you ready? 4 more years. 4 more years. 4 more years. 4 more years. Are you ready to move forward?
Yeah, we're ready to move forward there, Mr. Biden. Absolutely, we are. What strikes me about that is he's clearly lost. He's like, 4 more years. Pause. And then and then somebody saves him by starting this chant, and it took him a while, but he was like, oh yeah, this is good. This is good.
I know.
Yeah. And here again, I want to be very clear. I'm not doing this to mock the situation. As a matter of fact, if you listen to the podcast preceding the election, I was very clear. I thought it was sad that they were doing this to him. And the Democrats, and I did an infamous episode. That's the one where I had a couple of famous left-winger commentators block me, where I said the Democrats were on the path to lose because they weren't cultivating a candidate. And I said this was probably 9 months leading up to the election.
Oh, yeah.
So from a humanistic point of view, they shouldn't have done that to Joe Biden.
No.
Politically, the Democrats should not have done that to themselves. They should have had him announce that he was not running and properly run a primary, properly cultivated a candidate. I don't know what they could have done, but they would have had a better chance in rolling the dice. They had to know that he was not going to be able to make it another 4 years. It was iffy if he was going to finish his term well. He has since noticeably declined since the election. And the reason I'm talking to you about this is Jake Tapper. The book is Original Sin. I believe the full title is President Biden's Decline, Its Cover-Up, and His Disastrous Choice to Run Again. Here's the thing about Jake Tapper. He's a twit. The only twit that I can't stand is Stephen Colbert. That's the only one. He's at my top of my twit list right there. And Jake Tapper's somewhere down. He's like in the top 10. He was part of the snide comments, which has nothing to do with journalism. But he would twist his nose and make all kinds of snide remarks about Trump. And then he would put President Biden, always give him the benefit of the doubt, always put him in the best light. And in fact, so many people like Joe Scarborough and a bunch of this is the best Joe Biden ever. This version of Joe Biden is the best Biden ever. He clearly, to anybody that had any ounce of investigative skill, of observation, of going through the facts, could see that he was being micromanaged. He was on the stage with very deliberate handlers. He was not doing impromptu press conferences. His public appearances were very limited. And for Jake Tapper to come out there and say he had to write this book to uncover to disclose this cover up and how terrible it was and how everybody was misled. He was part of the partisan media. Now, I don't know what your opinion about this is, but the news from last week, since I talked about this, is that his ratings have severely dropped since he went on this tour for this book. What say you?
Yeah. So let's go back actually, it was a year ago. You and I were doing the election every single week, and we discussed quite openly that Biden was clearly incapacitated, that he was not well enough to be running again. And I myself discussed the fact that I felt like he was sick, not just mentally sick, but I pointed it out a year ago. And I'm not a nationally known journalist on a major TV network, but it was pretty obvious to my eyes that he was very ill. And I got very frustrated last year watching the liberal media prop him up, not speak the truth, not address what was obviously an issue. And you and I discussed I remember us talking really seriously about this we said they ran Tulsi Gabbard out, they ran RFK Jr. out, they forced Biden down everyone's throats without even taking doing the whatever it is when they they actually asked their party who they want to run. They didn't bother asking their party, and they all knew that he was never going to make it. And I believe that they didn't care. They were just trying to use him because they thought he'd be the easy way into the White House, and they were going to shove Kamala, who is so ill-equipped to be president, it's not even funny, down our throats. And then that all fell apart. And I think they were hoping that Trump would make a hot mess of things and that they would be able to save their careers. But then when Trump entered office, several of the major key figures in the liberal media ended up losing their careers. And I believe the only reason that Jake Tapper wrote this stupid book, which is a big old lie, this whole book is called I'm trying to save my career and reputation. And I can't even watch media now because they're so... I've heard all their BS last year and I see them all pretending to be shocked and concerned, and it's so disingenuous and so dishonest. I would much them up there going, you know what? I was an idiot. I was a fool. I learned. I see that Trump's trying hard. Whatever, like something other than you pretending that you did not lie to the American people because you wanted your candidate to win so badly, and that they demonized and tried to ruin Trump on levels that really blow my mind. And they're all trying to save themselves. And Jake Tapper, if I had any respect left, I lost it when that book came out. And by the way, I've written 3 books. How do you write a book that fast?
Yeah, either he had it in the works or somebody they really threw that together. A staff really threw it together. I'm not sure this Original Sin. I mean, it's a catchy name. That's now that comes out of religion, obviously, and I'm not sure where the term ties into this whole thing. I would never in a million years buy this book to find out what it's about. I mean, that is one thing that, you say you can't judge a book by its cover. The hell I can't.
Yeah.
The hell I can't. That's one I am not going to buy. One more thing about a political leader, this Macron. A video appeared to show French President Emmanuel Macron and his wife, Brigitte, shoving him in the face. Now, obviously, this is a visual thing, so for the audio audience, I'm sure you've seen the video, but we can talk through it. This is it in real time. There's the push right there, the kind of push in the face. Now here we slow it down, and there the hand comes in, and it puts his neck back, and then he kind of sloughs it off, and he kind of smiles there. And when he, I gotta say, it's strange. It's strange for a lot of reasons. That relationship is unorthodox. I don't necessarily have a problem with age gaps per se.
Yeah.
Okay. So, for example, I'm pushing, what am I now? 60. All right. If I went out with a 40-year-old girl, that would be a 20-year difference. But in most cases, at that age, in that part of life, there's not a big difference there. When you're talking about somebody who's 14 or 15 years old and you had 20 on top of that. Now that 20-year difference is huge because you have an established adult in their 30s or 40s messing around with somebody who's 15 years old who is not intellectually and physically developed yet. And he apparently came in contact with this woman when she was some sort of a teacher. And we don't know, exactly how this unfolded, if he was a minor or not when it did. But, this woman basically focused on him pretty early.
They call it grooming here in America.
Yes. And what you have now is a situation where I got to say, I know a lot of people joke about men in these situations liking the situation when you have an older woman involved or a teacher involved. It's a little different when emotions and all that are in with a boy who's developing. When you get infatuated with your first love and they're that much older, the power dynamic sometimes can never be undone. That person, as they get older, as time goes on, they're always under the spell of the emotional spell, the sexual spell, and they never really get on equal footing with the person. Yeah. And when this type of thing shows up, it makes a lot of people wonder, is he in some sort of a dynamic, and this is all speculation, of course, is he in some sort of a dynamic where, he's like in the cases of abuse, where you have domestic violence, where the woman there's a psychological problem there that just people say, well, why doesn't she leave? It's just not that simple. What's you have, I know you got, with all the things you've written about and everything, you probably have some opinions about this. What say you?
Yeah. Given their start in their relationship, it would be hard for that situation not to be one of, there's a level of codependency that it's clearly very unhealthy. And she would be the boss of that relationship. I think they also have that codependency, that kind of awkward dynamic of her being mommy, kind of a mother figure, even though they're a couple. Like, I know that sounds weird to some people, but what else would you describe that when he's basically a teenager when they meet and they're still together? They're also a political dynasty. Whether it's super impressive to some people or not, they're a political dynasty and they're basically running France. And so I think for those reasons alone, they're like the Clintons in that way. They wouldn't want to break up because for them it feels like the house is falling apart. But as a person who talks a lot about abuse, that is an abusive moment. And that is a man being abused. That is what that is. It can verbal abuse, emotional abuse. But when you basically strike someone like that, and this is my personal opinion, but you can feel the anger and frustration in her behavior. You can also see in his reaction to it that is not new. This is my opinion, but that behavior of, if that was something that had never happened before, the shock on his face would be quite stunning, and his body language would be different. That is somebody who's used to having somebody come at them. That's my opinion. I think it's kind of sad that he's still somewhat young, and he's with somebody who's I don't know. Sorry, I don't find her very appealing. I don't really get the appeal. She is really, really, really skinny in a way that I find strange.
This is it's uncomfortable for me as a man in today's world to gauge a woman's looks, and I'm not doing that in regard to, is she attractive or not attractive. This is moving into a more of an objective area where this person, and if it was the other way around, I'd say the same thing about him. She has a ghoulish appearance. There's something about this whole thing that just is not right. And I don't know what it is, but I hope he is well. Yeah. I hope he's well for himself and for the people of France. I hope he's in somewhat of a good situation. Okay. I ran across the video that you did, and a situation you were describing. I'm not sure exactly what sparked this online. There's been speculation that maybe Trump might have sparked it by some sort of a remark. There's also a video that was on TikTok that I was aware of, where this young girl was talking about she had 6 children, 6 what amounted to babies, and she said she needs more money, so she's going to have another one. And some big creators talked about this. I believe the older millennial, I don't know if that name is correct, but whatever, he's a big creator on there. He talked about it, and some other people talked about it. And it's a multifaceted issue. Okay, your point was basically what? When you talked about that video, what was your point in that?
Yeah, I kept getting videos in my feed of particularly men really trashing and generalizing that all women who have children from multiple daddies are lazy, basically good for nothing grifters, and useless. And it was really getting on my nerves because it was missing the whole. It's a complex situation, and I know it better than a lot of people because I was raised in one of the worst cities in the country in the 70s and the 80s, and I saw this sort of take root. And I understand that a lot of that attitude is also about deep-seated racism. The judgment of other people and their choices without you actually understanding what they went through to get to a place where they would make those choices. And one of the things that drives me crazy about social media that regular mass media has taught social media people is that it's okay to encapsulate a very complex situation into a one-sentence judgment of everyone that does it. And sure, if a woman got on and talked about having another kid because she needs more money, that's not great, but that's not the situation with the vast majority of women who come from poor areas of the country and choose to have multiple children, or not choose, have multiple children with multiple fathers. The situation is much deeper than that. Most of these women have complex post-traumatic stress disorder from childhood abuse. They grow up in incredibly difficult areas, the worst areas of the country generally. And a lot of them grow up with so much fear in their life experience that the easiest avenue for them to actualize on any level is to become a mom. And they're also dealing with men who won't take responsibility for where they propagate. The situation is really complicated, and we cannot reduce it to judging all of them as being a certain way, when what we need to do is actually build programs that teach people in these areas and in situations how to love themselves enough to make better decisions. And so I had posted that about it in the commentary. Wow. Some of the commentary just nasty, lazy, good for nothings. And it's like, well, let's just reduce them all to that. And my real issue with all that is that we have to stop using canned responses that take entire segments of the population and label them a particular way, when those situations are way more complicated than that. The same thing goes for drug. Most people who are in prison that are not like serious offenders, most of the people who were in jails and prisons were drug related, and most of those people, as Gabor Mate will talk about, have severe childhood trauma. And the drugs are an extension of the problem. They're not the problem. The drugs are to numb themselves, and so it was really very interesting. And my point to everyone is that it's very easy for us to talk about like the choices that other people should make, and that people are telling them to get a different mindset. And it's like, well, if that's so true, then why are the vast majority of people not happy? Because happiness is actually a matter of making certain lifestyle choices and practices in your life. And if it's so easy to just change things, then why isn't everybody happy? Well, they're not, because it's not that easy to change the way that you behave, because we are an extension of the circumstances, the things that we grow up seeing. So, it's a complex situation that can't be solved by just judging all of them. And frankly, we have bigger fish to fry in this country. I mean, the Energy Department alone sent almost $100 billion out the door to people who didn't even have formal businesses or business plans. Half of that money went to people who didn't even have a business plan. Billions of dollars handed over to organizations, people without a business plan or even a real business. And that's the kind of thing that we need to be focusing our issue. The people who are using welfare and food stamps in this country are not the people who are draining this country of all of its money. Come on.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that. I can tell you that, there's nuance to any situation. For example, there are people who play the system. There's no question. There's absolutely no question. I have more experience in what I do with some of the nonprofits and everything in the area that I am with the homeless than I do with the situations that we're speaking of, but I presume it's very similar. I was out at a light. I don't know if I told you the story or not. About a year ago, this was summertime. The windows were rolled down, and you're enjoying the air. And I didn't really notice them at first, but I was at the light, and somebody was standing on the corner with a sign. And I was in the middle of the street. There was somebody in the right lane next to the curb, and this guy shouts to this person. He says, "Hey, McDonald's, Burger King, they're all hiring." Okay. And here again, I understand where that comes from. I cringe every time I see one of these news reporters. One of them had this guy in a wheelchair, and he was speaking, like he was impaired. "What you doing with the camera?" And all this. And well, they caught him, break him down. That was all an act. And he was bragging about how much money he made a year. Okay, I cringe every time I see one of those, because I know that instills the impression that the guy standing on the corner in your neighborhood is making $100,000 a year. Okay.
Yeah.
First of all, it's not about money. I have been, there's two homeless shelters that I'm pretty actively around through the course of a week. And these people come in this one table. It's a hot meals program that is provided once a week by this organization here in town. And let me tell you something. These people who have worked in this kitchen and hall, some of them have worked there 20 years and they've never been paid a dime. Okay, a lot of them are semi-retired and all that. They come in there or retired, and they come in there and they do this out of the goodness of their heart. And hundreds of people come through there, and I've been in there when the lines are coming through. And these people very clearly, I wouldn't say that they're mentally challenged or that they're on drugs or anything like that, but they're simply people who intellectually, let's say, cannot function in a modern society. Mm-hmm. Okay, a lot of them have been taken advantage of by their own kids. Any assistance they got or any savings they got has been taken from them in a lot of cases. They can't manage their appointments, their doctor visits, their prescriptions, and they're just basically existing. Okay, this is a problem that is very comprehensive. And saying, oh well, because typically the two sides on this are the liberals that say, oh, well, that's because all the rich landlords are raising the rent. And then on the other side, the conservatives say, oh, the jobs the economy is good. All you got to do is go out and get a job. Those are oversimplifications of this problem. There's an economic component, to be sure. And here again, I'm sure there's people out there who could do more to help themselves. But for the most part, the vast majority of them are in a situation where they actually need almost like daycare for adults. They really cannot function in society. They can't manage. If they do get any monetary assistance from any government program or any grants, they don't know how to manage it. And it's not because they're lazy or they're all these answers. It's just they're just simply not capable of it, and they have fallen through the cracks. Their families have either died, disappeared, abandoned them, whatever. And just building houses or telling them to get a job is not going to solve the problem. And I think what you have with what you're speaking of is you have societal components in a lot of ways that the government has contributed to. And then you have other things within these given populations themselves, like you were talking about how men treat women and everything else. These are all things that are multi-layered, and some things you can do as a government to help that, and some things you can't. So I don't know what the solution is, but labeling these people as in derogatory terms and just brushing them off, like I said, it's not fair. I'm sure it's more complex than that, just by my experience with the homeless population. Yeah. And like you said, when you get up in the morning, I'll tell you a good example of this. What really drives me nuts is these investigative reporters on the local news. Have you ever caught these guys? There was one up in Cleveland that actually put a trench coat on, and he had these dark glasses. Okay. And I remember one time he caught the guy that drove around in a van through downtown Cleveland, and his job was collecting the nickels in the parking meters. And apparently this guy had a habit of taking a long lunch break and taking a little nap. So this investigative reporter comes up to the van and pounding on the window, and the guy's like, "Oh, what's going on? What's going on?" You know, and he goes, "Excuse me, would you like to explain to the taxpayers why you're taking a nap on the job?" Okay, is this the guy that's making my life miserable? The guy it's always somebody, some poor hack who's just trying to get through the day. You know, some mom and pop grocery store on the corner that's got a box of Cheerios or whatever on the shelf that's a day past its expiration date. Those are the people that get raked through the coals. And ask yourself this: why do these investigative reporters who work for these television stations never go after all these big car dealerships that are always pushing all these subprime loans? You know, all these subprime loans that they're pushing for these piece of what cars. They don't investigate those people because those are their biggest advertisers. That's why they don't go after. And you can't tell me that all those car dealerships on there never got a bum deal and never had a customer call one of these investigative reporters to investigate their crappy car deal, especially on the subprime loans, which are absolute out of control. That's a whole other topic for another day. But when you see these ads, oh, we'll get you financed or we'll give you a free iPad. The fact of the matter is everybody gets financed. You know, you have to put so much down. And who knows if the blue book of that car is if it's even worth that, okay? The down payment you have to put down, and you're probably paying some exorbitant rate. Of course they'll get you financed. Whether you want to take the deal or not is another thing, but they'll get you into a deal. And as soon as you drive it off the lot, they've already covered themselves. Between the down payment and everything else, they've already covered themselves. So no matter what happens to that, if it gets repoed, it goes back into the system. Now, there's laws about the same dealership can't always take the car back, but it goes back into the system in one way or another, or you pay the car off and you lose your ass on it. And in a lot of cases, those pay here, buy here, pay here deals aren't always good because sometimes it doesn't help your credit to pay off those exorbitant rates because those small places aren't always reporting those things. So those I'm never really impressed by these investigative reporters that go out and banging on windows and ambushing these garbage men and everything else that are taking a nap on the job. That doesn't impress me one bit.
No, come on.
So yeah. So not to get off the track, but that's what I was saying. Those people that are on these things, they're not the reasons why your prescriptions are astronomically high. They're not any of that. They're not the reason you don't have health insurance. It's not any of those. Those people are not the ones that are causing those kinds of problems. Not to say that we don't need to pay attention to those things, because they do need fixed. They need fixed not only because of the money they cost, but they need fixed more importantly because our society needs fixed.
Yeah.
Is that your opinion on that? Is that kind of where you were going with that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly where I was going. I mean, it's like in the realm of the issues that we have that are affecting the vast majority of people and are inhaling the vast majority of our budget. It is not people on food stamps. It is corporations not paying their taxes. It is people who over the last 20 years, basically stole money and used it for all sorts of scammy. The stuff that Doge has been finding for the last few months is absolutely. I mean, I'm not surprised. I am surprised at just how blatant. I mean, the fact that you can get $5 billion from this government without a business plan or even a logo, should be shocking people more than it is. Like that actually stuns me. That is where we need to be focusing our priority, because that's going to affect the most people. We get the corporations, if we get jobs back, if we get manufacturing back, if we come up with a great plan for making AI put us back on the global map as manufacturers and producers of things and generate jobs that way, or at least generate income for the country so that we can deal with what's going to happen. I mean, those are big issues that we need to be addressing. I don't think that primetime news needs to be spending its time talking about some one lady who decided she wants to have another kid because it'll make her money. Like, that is not the main issue.
Yep.
And focus on programs that can help with situations like that to give people self-esteem so that they can make better decisions, because the vast majority of Americans make bad decisions all the time, but we don't hear about them being crucified on social media.
Exactly.
So,
you had mentioned Doge. The big news right now, I guess, is that Elon Musk has backed away from it. I'm not making too much more of this than what it is. I mean, I know the liberals are all over it, but and what really stirred the pot a little bit was he did say he doesn't agree with everything on Trump. Which here again, I don't think that's an over the top statement. I don't agree with everybody 100% of the time, or anybody, I should say, 100% of the time. Your thoughts on that? Have you followed that at all?
Yeah. No, I'm not surprised that he would step back. Frankly, he's too talented to continue to have to do, like, he set up the system, and he's got some intelligent people in there. His brain needs to be used to do the things that he's already set up. He's got a lot going on. I wouldn't have much respect for Trump's advisors if they always all agreed with everything he says. I mean, what do we need? We need more politicians to tell the big guy everything he wants to hear. You know, it's come on. We need people who are honest. That's what we've been lacking in politics for the longest time. And he's got businesses to run. I don't think his brain is needed anymore. He came in, he sort of plowed that road so that other people could then not go in and harvest it. But what I'm concerned about is that that work has been done by him, and we're not going to see the results of that work that we're supposed to see, like Doge checks, or to see where that money will go in the future, or to see the system be fixed. You know, that's what I hope to see done. And, you know, we shall see. There's a lot of talk, but, you know, I have seen some great action going on with Trump. So I wasn't surprised, but honestly, the liberals absolutely despise him now. It's funny. You can be George Soros and pay for all sorts of politicians in this country to have a career, and you never hear a single liberal talk about that. But you have Elon Musk giving Trump money, and he's Satan. It's like, yeah. But you know, the liberals are so miserable right now.
Oh, they're miserable.
I can't even listen to them because they're so. You know, Billy, honestly, I've been around a long time, and I knew that there was some serious distortion. We talked about it all last year. I had no idea just how delusional and how much hatred to the point where they want to destroy good programs, hatred to the point where they want to ruin any progress that is actually being made that will benefit the American people, hatred to the point where they say things that don't actually make any sense nor lead anywhere good. It is so sad and so disturbing. Like, I didn't realize how many idiots. I mean, I knew we had a lot of idiots here, but idiots in positions of power.
Yes.
And the Democratic Party does not look like it's going to rescue itself anytime soon, because they just keep saying dumber and dumber shit.
They do. You know, we were talking about a candidate that's viable. I'm not sure they have one right now. Quite frankly, if I was working for the Democrats, I think if you would take somebody like AOC and move her to the middle, and 3 years is an eternity until the next election, they might have something there. Some of these other people, Buttigieg, I'm not into. That guy out in California, Gavin Newsom, no. So yeah, they're in bad shape. I will say this about Elon Musk in comparison with just Soros and some of these other people, whether they're on the right or left and just have mountains of money. He is changing society, much as Steve Jobs did, much as Henry Ford did. Those people that I just mentioned had their faults. J.P. Morgan all did. Carnegie, all those people did. But you can't argue the banking system that we have today, the world that we have today, with the way we travel, the way we process information now, all those things, those people were transformative figures for society as much as they were people who were successful, you know, with money. And Elon Musk is one of those people. And I have a lot of respect for that. He's transforming the way we live, and I really think the next few years are going to be very interesting with what he's doing with SpaceX and what he's doing right now with Neuralink. That's one you don't hear too much about.
Well, I'm almost afraid of Neuralink because of the potential that it has. If it gets misused, I mean, he doesn't generally, as a rule, misuse.
Yeah.
Which is something he never gets credit for. But I mean, I have that issue with AI in general when it starts to involve itself inside the human body. But anyway, it'll be interesting. Yeah, he's definitely the Einstein of our time.
Yeah, he's interesting. I'll say that. And like I said, he for whatever you want to say about him, there's some really cool stuff. And if you're against SpaceX and you poo-poo all that stuff just because you don't like Elon Musk, I got to say, you got to look into some of the things that they have innovated in terms of how those rockets pilot themselves and everything else with no wings or anything. It's really, really some amazing stuff. I did notice President Trump was asked about the Macron situation with his wife pushing his face before the door opened on the jet, and he said, "Oh, you better keep the door closed," which which I thought was funny.
Yeah.
As we're wrapping up here, as I've gotten older, I don't know. I've mentioned Michael Jackson, I've mentioned Prince, I mentioned George Michael, Eddie Van Halen, all these people that were just incredible figures in my childhood, and they seemed like they were larger than life, and they're gone now. And every time I catch somebody that I just took for granted was a capable adult when I was young, every time one of them leaves us, it reminds me that those dominoes are coming closer and closer to me, And Loretta Swit is one of those people. When I was in grade school, my parents watched MASH, and I thought it was funny, even though I was in grade school and I didn't get everything that was in there. There was a lot of subliminal things in MASH. This was in the post-Vietnam era. And there was a lot of little messages in MASH that even though they were in the Korean War in the show, they were really commenting on the post-Vietnam era here in the United States. So I didn't necessarily pick all that up, but I can tell you that I enjoyed the show, and we watched it in reruns. A lot of my friends, and when we were in school and got older and stuff, we watched it in reruns. So Loretta Swit, she was the one who was referred to as Hot Lips Houlihan. And she also did a lot with that character to make her more than a feminine stereotype.
Yeah.
Someone with feeling, someone with some depth to that character. And of course, she went on to act in other things, but nothing was ever as big as MASH. The closing of MASH, I believe, still to this day.
Oh yeah.
And that was back in early 1980s when television, in some ways it was bigger, in some ways it was smaller. But that for a scripted show, we're not talking about some news event or a sporting event. For a scripted show, that ending is like at the top ever in terms of the audience that it had. So Loretta Swit has passed away at the age of 87. So
oh wow, I didn't realize that she God, honestly, Billy, I'm starting to go like when I start seeing people like this, I'm like, oh boy, I thought she was like in her 60s or 70s, but no, of course she's not. I loved Loretta Swit. I loved Hot Lips. I loved the show. I loved the complexity of the show. I loved that it spoke to so many topics that were actually controversial, and they did it in a way, you could get away with humor back then. I mean, we're finally getting back to humor again, but the shows like the Jeffersons and Archie Bunker and MASH, like they were truly groundbreaking, and they addressed a lot of really serious topics, and they did it with humor. And she was a great icon for women because she was strong, but she was feminine, she was beautiful, but she was a badass. And I remember my mother loved her. She loved her character. One of the first songs I learned to play on the guitar was Suicide is Madness, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
And for people who are younger to understand, MASH every week when it aired had as many people as like the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
That's the difference in media now when we were kids, or when I was a kid in the 70s, is that most people in every household in the country would watch like Fantasy Island or Bunker or MASH, especially MASH because it was such a top show. And when it ended, it was like, it was a big deal. Brilliant show. And hey, she had a long and really interesting life. So hopefully she has a safe travels on her way to wherever.
Yes. Yes, another one that I took for granted all those years and watching on TV, and another one's gone. So always hate to see that happen. But anyway, Cynthia, thank you so much for coming on the program today. What are you up to lately?
Oh my goodness. I just reissued Memory Mansion with a new cover. It got back on the bestseller list, which is awesome. And I'm super excited. I've got the Soul Tech Future Festival September 4th in Boca Raton at the Countess de Hornley Theater. It is the big fundraiser for the Soul Tech Foundation. The foundation shares workshops and retreats like Soul Bloom and Blossom, which teach adults and kids how to have spiritual and lifestyle practices that create mental and emotional mastery to help them navigate life on more solid footing. We create our reality, whether we're poor, we're rich, our circumstances really don't make a difference in whether we're happy or not. That's an internal experience. And so to be able to bring those courses and workshops, I'm having the Soul Tech Future Festival September 4th. So if you want tickets, I have some, we're doing TED style talks as well as performances from people in the arts. And so go to soultechfoundation.org and order your tickets now.
Awesome. That is fantastic. A couple of interesting things come up. I can't give too much details on some of this because some of the things I'm going to talk about, the ink hasn't been put in place yet on some of this stuff, but there's a good chance we are going to have a candidate for governor of the state of Texas on the program. And if she wins, she's going to be the first Republican female governor. So that is coming up. Some other things going on that are kind of interesting as well. So all of those things, what we're doing with the Friday Night Lives is, for those of you here again for the first time, we cover a lot of different topics, get different viewpoints, and we try to have a balanced discussion. And also, in addition to that, we also do the studio podcasts, which, a lot of those times, those are author interviews, people who have gone through some sort of a trauma and they have a positive message. I really like that kind of content. Some of those are audio only. All the podcasts we do, whether there's a video associated with them or not, are on the audio platforms. We have been on all the major audio platforms for going on 10 years now. We have a loyal listenership there, and everything goes. For my money, if you say you have a podcast, you should be able to go to a major podcast platform and search out that name and have it pop up. That's, to me, what a podcast is. And we've been on all the major platforms now for about 10 years. You can find me on social media, the former Twitter, which is now X, @BillyDees. That's kind of like my social media home. Cynthia, thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight.
Thank you, Billy. I had a great time.
Awesome. And we will talk to you again very, very soon. Have a good one.
Thank you for listening to the Billy Dees podcast. Follow Billy Dees on X @BillyDees for updates about the program.
Do you listen to music or audiobooks on streaming devices such as Sonos or Amazon speakers? How about on your car sound system? If you use Spotify, Audible, or Amazon Music on any of these systems, you can also listen to the Billy Dees podcast the same way. Billy and his team go the extra mile to make sure our podcasts sound as good or better than anything on the radio. Listening to the Billy Dees podcast has never been easier. You literally just have to ask.